Hello, welcome LinkedIn Live. Happy post solar eclipse day. Yes, I'm still in the eclipse frame of mind. It hasn't eclipsed me in terms of thinking about the eclipse. Wherever you were, hopefully, if you were in North America somewhere, hopefully maybe you got a good view safely with those glasses or pinhole camera. I'm based out of Toronto, and I was in the sort of the midtown of the city, and it was super cloudy. So I got to see a little bit of it just at the beginning, as the moon was passing across the sun, and then it went super cloudy, and it became a little bit disappointing in the sense that we couldn't really see much. But I know those that were in other parts of Canada, the United States, got a great view, and hopefully you have that solar eclipse bliss after you're feeling good and not apocalyptic. I mean, I've even that little brief glimpse I got of it was just awe-inspiring, but unfortunately just couldn't see very much of it after maybe the first 5 minutes of it beginning. So thank you for joining me today on LinkedIn Live post eclipse day. Today I just wanted to go through a bit of just shopping through some AI news, talking about Jon Stewart, AI regulations, Claude, and some other things that are happening in the space. Again, things happen so quickly in this space. It's hard to keep up, even for myself that spends a lot of time reading and listening to the podcast and just trying to say what is happening in this space. And so, with that, again, more eclipse metaphors, analogies. I always get those two confused, but these news stories quickly eclipse themselves in the AI space. So let's start off with Jon Stewart. Why not? We start off with Jon Stewart. So Jon Stewart, who I've been watching for a long time. Again, some of us will have different opinions of Jon Stewart, but he does have a voice in terms of talking about certain topics that gets him passionate, and specifically those that involve levels of regulations or lack thereof. And just be 2 weeks ago, he talked about artificial intelligence on his program, and I thought it was interesting. And I won't show a clip because I don't have the rights to do that, but I'll just show the tenor of the article, the tenor of his beginning monologue. And what's interesting about this is when I deliver these programs, whether they be live or webinars or on demand about generative AI and the progress of I try to look at it in a positive light, right? And say that with the lunar eclipse or solar eclipse behind me. And he has more of a strong opinion about where this is going. And I can see that. So I thought it was an interesting because he has a great voice. He gives a certain particular perspective. And to some degree, I listened to it and I encourage you to watch it. And his was somewhat apocalyptic about the speed in which AI is moving. And what he does really well on a show is really make satire of those that are providing the counter argument. So he showed Sam Altman, he showed Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft and the CEO of OpenAI, respectively, talking about the future of AI and how those that are potentially threatened by this will just have to learn how to develop new skills. And it made it sound very easy that yes, there might be some job threats, but we just have to relearn our skills and we'll be fine. And he looked at it very differently that no, these are coming for jobs, and just retraining the workforce will not make up for the total job loss. And what is happening here with the way this is going to affect employment? And his focus, of course, was on middle to lower class, those that are maybe working on a production line or doing repetitive work. Where will those jobs go? It's not, and the argument has been, we'll just retrain people. We'll just have them learn how to program or how to work with generative AI, learn how to do prompt engineering, which he made fun of. And I've talked about prompts. That was the last LinkedIn Live. And so it was an interesting perspective. It was one which a very, very opinionated one, and saying that this is a real threat to a lot of people's jobs. And I don't disagree with that. I've talked about it for actors and artists and other professions that really this is going to affect their jobs and potentially replace their jobs. And we're already seeing that happening at a vast rate. And what does that mean for the world that we're going to work with when we're potentially replacing a ton of jobs. So he put that out there to say, hey, there's this really positive framing of artificial intelligence that it can help us think and do things, but it's replacing us in some ways. And so that is something I've talked about on my program on LinkedIn Live. He was just more direct about it. What I would say for very specific professions, CPAs, those in the space that are around that, accounting and finance, lawyers, and this is a little bit of privilege, I'll say, for us, because we work in a space where there's a lot of this, what we call professional judgment and professional skepticism and trust. That's probably the biggest thing. People still trust those with fiduciary duties, such as lawyers and doctors and CPAs, for their opinion coming from the human opinion, the brain, from us. And so as long as that, for a lot of things, now some of those things people might go to AI. Maybe they don't, they say, you know what, I trust an AI tax program to do my personal and corporate taxes. Maybe I trust an AI program to produce my will or to create another standard legal document. But there's a lot of other services where people want us and our professional judgment. That somewhat provides a little bit of protection, like those solar glasses that you were wearing yesterday, for potential changes to the way we work in that space. But it doesn't leave us completely immune. We have to adapt to how to use these models. We have to understand that this could also change. The element that I'm saying about professional judgment, professional skepticism, that Jon Stewart was really focusing on a certain group of workers, could impact us as well. I don't see it yet. Now, there's weak AI or narrow AI, which I've talked about, but there's also strong artificial intelligence. And if that happens, yes, professional judgment, professional skepticism, things that make us professionals in terms of the professions I mentioned, but critical thinking, could be replaced by artificial intelligence. So we have to, I don't know if you can prepare for that, but when it comes to the tools, like we talked about Copilot, ChatGPT, I'll mention Claude, Gemini, we do as a professional want to start to play and start to understand how to use these tools and pair it with our professional judgment and professional skepticism. So it's really, though, I liked his video. I liked his monologue because it does provide to me what is something that we have not really talked about as much when we talk about sort of the benefits of artificial intelligence, which is the downside effect to jobs, which is real, which is really real. And I know some of these CEOs have mentioned it and talked about it, but the way he framed it was that they're kind of saying it, but they're saying, don't worry about these jobs. You'll be able to retrain and learn new skills. And the speed of artificial intelligence development and the way it can replace many, 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 many jobs, it should be very concerning. And I think that was a salient point for Jon Stewart. My framing of this conversation is around a specific particular space, those that are really for the LinkedIn audience. So I encourage you to watch it. I'll put the YouTube link for Jon Stewart's monologue on my LinkedIn Live. So next, what are we going to talk about next in a few selected topics in my LinkedIn Live? So next, let's go into regulations, because I just mentioned regulations. Now, there is a lot of movement around regulations and AI. It will become a political issue as we move into elections in certain countries. It is a global issue, especially with the geopolitical environment there is now. What are the threats and potentially opportunities, but more the threats to artificial intelligence? And I talked about the European Union having developed a risk assessment pyramid for development of artificial intelligence. And the United States is also trying to say to the UN and the world at large, hey, we need policies in place. And there's been recent development with this. The U.S. went to the UN General Assembly and presented what they feel is an urgent need to move into some sort of policy, and this was co-sponsored by other countries as well, for a baseline of principles for the development and use of AI. And this is where it's the balancing act between, hey, AI is good, but just like Jon Stewart, and Jon Stewart was more like, AI is bad, dot, dot. These governments have to say, well, AI is out of the can, it's here, but we need to have some basic guidelines. This is really for the developers. Companies like Google, Microsoft, Apple, anyone that's working with an AI, but also smaller businesses, because it doesn't have to be a large Silicon Valley based company that is now developing generative AI. It can be because we have access to some of these models within GPTs and ChatGPT. It can be one person. It can be three people in a small business that come up with an idea. And what do we need to look at when we talk about what are the apps and software and that is developed? What's the information that's being used to fed into these? What are the threats geopolitically, to privacy, to any number of threats? Because this is moving so quickly, this is moving ahead of how quickly countries and other regulators can regulate it. So they're just trying to say now we got to regulate this. ChatGPT went out too quickly, I guess, for most governments to really understand what this is. And there is a real urgency to do this, especially as we move into an election cycle and all the things that are happening geopolitically. What are the ways this shouldn't be used or should be regulated? Right now, it's a conversation. I think the European Union's pyramid, which I showed in a previous LinkedIn Live, their risk assessment of what cannot be produced by any software company, such as those that have racial or discriminatory bias or produce misleading or false information or in any way works in warfare. There was these no-go. They cannot be developed by these software company by anybody, and there needs to be policies in place to prevent that and detect it. And then there's these other ones, and the other layers where there's high risk, medium risk, and low risk. Those are fuzzy because high risk might be something around safety for example, a plane. Thinking about Boeing, where they deploy generative AI or AI solutions to maybe look at safety risks. That's a high risk because that's personal safety for the passengers. But one of the things in that pyramid, it wouldn't say to Boeing or Airbus, whatever company that might use this, don't use it because we see the value of it, but you'd have to have a lot of protocol in place. You might have to have an audit, be inspected. So this is still moving forward, and I'll keep you apprised as we see more and more news. And generally, what I would think will happen is something bad will happen. I'll be negative. Something bad will happen with the use of artificial intelligence or generative AI, and there'll be a great push to move this to legislature, to world governments. And so generally that's the way it has happened. We haven't had a real catastrophic event where we can say that was generative AI. Like one that galvanizes everybody and that everyone can understand. I don't want to put on a black hat, especially with the beautiful eclipse behind me, but could that happen? Yes, that could be the place where things really pick up steam. The last thing I wanted to mention, three things today. So we talked about Jon Stewart, which I encourage you to watch a segment, and the movement of AI regulation. Is other competitors to really the big three: ChatGPT, Gemini, which is so OpenAI's ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, and Copilot. And what would be the differentiators with these competitors? Because those have such a real first movers advantage, especially OpenAI. But Gemini is moving quickly. Copilot, Microsoft works with OpenAI, so those are the ones that when we say a business user or just population at large, you're going to probably go to those three. And if you're going to other generative AI solutions, like I've showed with Pi or with other solutions like HeyGen that does video avatars, they're using ChatGPT as their data engine to create these. So what would a competitor, another player in the space look like? Well, it could look like Claude. And Claude is in a versioning stage, and they're at a version now that there's a lot of hype around it. I have not. I've signed up for access to it. I'm on a waiting list. So I would highly recommend that you sign up and see if you can get in. It depends on your geography. I'm based out of Canada. I might be on a more likely to be on a waiting list than if you're in the U.S. But what's interesting about Claude is it's trained by Anthropic using constitutional AI. And so it's a different approach to try to address some of the ethical challenges or concerns that ChatGPT and Gemini and others had. in terms of what is their data set, what is their output, what is the prompt mechanisms, is it producing content that is misleading, hallucinating, false, all these things that are there are real concerns with those other platforms. Claude is using a different approach. It's almost considered like ethical artificial intelligence to be safe, accurate, and secure, the best assistant for you to do your work. Again, I can't try it myself yet because I don't. I have signed up for access a few weeks ago. So it has a lot of, at least in the descriptions, a lot of the attributes of the other generative AI platforms that are out there, and how it's differentiating. One, it's saying it's better, it produces better results in terms of multimodal results, text, video. I cannot say yet because I haven't been able to test this, but I want to just put this out there. But this is the way in which another player can enter the space. To me, the biggest thing is this constitutional AI. And this constitutional AI is AI prompt and outputs really bounded by a framework that you could read and see, so that you feel like it's doing its best, the outputs, to be ethical, constitutional, have some standards, where we really don't see that as much in Gemini and OpenAI. Like OpenAI as a company has standards. This ChatGPT, has it been founded with standards or principles? Obviously, they redline ChatGPT to make sure it doesn't produce content that is harmful or misleading or violates any type of law. But to have it sort of as like the foundation of it to be this constitutional AI, which is considered more ethical, will be interesting. And it's interesting to note that Claude was founded and started by ex-OpenAI employees and some ex-board members. And so I'll put that link out there. If you have, maybe in a different geography, you'll get access to it quicker. But I do not have access to it yet. So that's just a dot, dot, dot. So those three things: Jon Stewart's YouTube Daily Show monologue. He also interviewed an AI regulator after that, and I thought that was really interesting. And then you have the movement in U.S. Regulations with the UN and just globally more regulations, or at least a thought to move this along faster than Claude. That is not the only generative AI news that is out there. But in terms of just keeping up to date, those three things are, I think, are interesting: regulations, opinions, new platform. All right. If you're tired of seeing this behind me, I think it's a nice background, but I'll only use it today because I just happen to have this LinkedIn Live on a Tuesday after the solar eclipse. And so this seemed to be a good time to change my background. Yeah, so hopefully this was helpful for you in just keeping up to speed with a lot of things that are happening. As I say, I encourage you to just not feel overwhelmed and just go out there and just try to read as much, as long as unless you're having fun doing it like I am, but just little things here and there just to keep apprised. I am going to be taking a little bit of a break from LinkedIn Live just because my travel season is underway. My training season, I'm delivering a lot of training and traveling over the next few weeks. So I believe I'll be back in May, but I'll be posting about AI and doing other things on LinkedIn. So please keep updated with me on LinkedIn Live. I also should say this is being streamed on YouTube as well, but I don't have as many viewers on YouTube as I do LinkedIn Live. All right, I wanted to keep this 20 minutes, those three updates today. Thank you for watching, and hopefully you'll have a great Tuesday post-solar eclipse day, and we will see you in a few weeks. Thanks, everybody, for watching.